Your mask's one ear is not around your ear. The United Nations General Assembly declared May 3 to be World Press Freedom Day, observed to raise awareness of the importance of freedom of the press and remind governments of their duty to respect and uphold the right to freedom of expression enshrined under Article 19 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A very good evening and a warm welcome to Talk of the Nation. I'm your host, Denver Kisting, and Maggie Kashina Monene is your sign language interpreter this evening. Now, from the 1st to the 3rd of May, Namibia is hosting the global celebration of World Press Freedom Day, marking the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration. Joining me in the studio to talk about the readiness of the event this evening are Dr. Peya Moshalenga, the Minister of Information and Communication Technology. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Deva. Good evening, viewers.
We're also joined this evening by Mr. Frank Stefan. He's the chairperson of the Editors Forum of Namibia. Good evening, sir, and welcome to you too.
Good evening, Denver. Thanks for having me.
This evening, Mr. Jafar Musa Al-Kadum, representative to Namibia of UNESCO, is also joining us in studio. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers, and thank you for inviting me.
In a bit, we'll also be joined by Mr. Jovial Rantau, chairperson of the African Editors Forum via Skype. We'll announce it as soon as he has joined us. Now, in the next insert, let's take a look at the reactions from some of the senior media practitioners around the issue of media freedom as well as the Windhoek Declaration. Let's take a look.
From the 1st to 3rd of May, Namibia will host the 2021 World Press Freedom Day commemoration, which coincides with the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration for the development of a free, independent and pluralistic press. The Windhoek Declaration is a statement of press freedom principles put together by African newspaper journalists in 1991. The declaration was put together at UNESCO's seminar promoting an independent and pluralistic African press held in Windhoek from the 29th of April until the 3rd of May 1991. World Press Freedom Day was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in 1993, following the recommendation of UNESCO's General Conference in 1991. Toivo Njabela, Namibian Sun editor and champion for the 2021 World Press Freedom Day celebrations, says the declaration was the outcome of a long and frank look at the problems in African print media.
So press freedom, has evolved over the years. There was a time when it nearly didn't exist at all. And then thanks to our forefathers of journalism, if you like, and foremothers, who have really put in the shift to push for the evolution of journalism as a concept, as a trade, and press freedom as a concept. We have now seen over the years how nations have embraced the concept, big institutions of the world, your UNESCO's, the UN in general, accepting that, as a matter of fact, recognizing it almost as a human right. So it has helped now to get us where we are. There's so much work to be done still, but one can say that a lot has been achieved.
World Press Freedom Day serves as a reminder to governments of the need to respect their commitment to media freedom and is also a day for reflection among media professionals about issues surrounding media freedom and professional ethics. The media thus plays a crucial role in disseminating reliable information to the public.
Is staff development happening regularly? You know, when last did our journalists have a refresher course, for example? Do we practice what we preach? So it cannot just remain in writing. It must become real living documents. And but I get back to the point of assessing our own team from within. That's where the change begins. Now, yes, I know budgets and those challenges, but the more we practice innovative approaches and we set an example, the more others want to buy in to what is happening in your institution.
World Press Freedom Day is a day of support for media which are targets for the restraint or abolition of press freedom. It is also a day to remember those journalists who lost their lives in the exercise of their profession.
When it comes to making, media freedom and rights work, it is not only incumbent upon the government, it is also incumbent upon, everybody in society. And whether they are observed or not, it's also very much incumbent upon the journalists themselves. To what extent you as journalists or media practitioners stand up for those rights and freedoms.
Ambassador Albertus Augemup, permanent delegate of Namibia to UNESCO, underlines that Namibia was delighted to take over the baton, highlighting that the World Press Freedom Day event is not a once-off activity and that press freedom is an issue that people should engage with continuously.
Namibia is happy to take over the baton from where you have left, and I know that we will be counting on your experience of hosting the 2020 event, especially during these extraordinarily challenging times that we are confronted with. And we hope that come May next year, we would hopefully be able to have some sort of, at worst, a hybrid solution, learning from what you will be able to manage in December this year, to ensure that the 30th anniversary, but also the World Press Freedom Day are celebrated by all. And hopefully we would be reporting fewer incidents of journalists whose lives are at risk, few journalists in jail, hopefully few of them free and practicing their craft undisturbed, unhindered, but protected by all of us.
Media freedom has a firm hold in Namibia, which is considered Africa's best-ranked country in the World Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders.
As a journalist, you don't want to be in a position where you cannot defend what you've written. Defend correctly, not just defend for the sake of it. So to my fellow journalists, let's push, let's make the industry better. It's a small industry compared to other countries given the size of the market and the population. But we should get it right. And there's a reason why we are on top of African press freedom charts. There's a reason for that. And we can't now get distracted and lose that status. So we have to do things correctly. And also thank our government. Because when press freedom, I always say that when you're on top of the African press freedom charts, it's because you're operating in an environment that enables the kind of work that we do. So when press freedom is not there, we blame government. That it's a draconian media space that we're operating in. But we often do not give credit also when the opposite is true, to say when we are thriving in the manner that we are doing is because we have a regulatory environment that is conducive for our work to happen.
Welcome back. This is Talk of the Nation. Tonight we're unpacking freedom of expression in general, but World Press Freedom Day in particular. Dr. Mshalenga, the Windhoek Declaration is a statement of press freedom principles put together by African newspaper journalists in 1991, as we had heard in the insert that we just saw. How significant is it, according to you, that the world returns to the birthplace of the Windhoek Declaration 30 years down the line?
Thank you very much. It is very significant that this year, the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration, it is Namibia that is going to host the event for obvious reasons, that we are ranked the best in Africa in terms of press freedom. It is important and significant that the declaration that have been adopted in this country, the government has lived up to the letter and spirit of that declaration. And it has been exemplary to some other governments as far as the issue of press freedom is concerned. It is thus significant that where press freedom was born is where it will be celebrated 30 years later in a country that still upholds those virtues of press freedom.
Perhaps before we move to Mr. Stefan, why is it important for a country to still uphold those virtues, as you put it?
It is important because democracies, freedom of speech, freedom of the press are one of the virtues that are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the UN Charter. So it is therefore important that a country that is a member of the United Nations uphold these principles. Not only that, it is also enshrined in our Constitution. And again, government is upholding these virtues that are enshrined in our Constitution.
Thank you very much, Doc. Mr. Stefan, what do you make of us returning to the birthplace of the Windhoek Declaration 30 years down the line?
I think it's more than just the obvious. This is important for all of us. Number one, obviously to celebrate the number one position. But I think just as much as Namibia took over a responsibility 30 years ago in leading the way forward in terms of press freedom and setting some guidelines, obviously not alone, but as a team of everybody who was here, it is maybe time to come back to actually to the continent and try and extend what we started there to our neighboring countries. Whether we like it or not, it's not quite as free as we would want it all over the continent. And I think Africa as a continent is getting it right. We're making huge strides in joining forces and becoming stronger by the day in terms of whether it's SADC or COMESA or whoever. And over time, who knows? One day we might be a United States of Africa. Who knows? But the point is, this is the start. If we start exchanging information, exchanging information is one thing, but experience and being open about what we do, transparent. So I think it's very significant that we as Namibians are fortunate enough to have a good standing in terms of press freedom, that we extend that voice over to our neighbors and their neighbor. So to work it forward and get it more out in the open internationally, not only in Africa.
That pursuit of extending what we're experiencing and enjoying in Namibia to our neighboring countries and to the rest of the continent, how will celebrating the event here contribute to the pursuit?
I think quite simply because the focus is on Namibia, it's by extension is on Africa. And I think you've got to start in Africa. If we were able to convince the world that we as Africans can do it, then there's no reason why it shouldn't work in South America, why it shouldn't work in Asia. And it's exactly what we heard earlier. The buy-in becomes more. And so I think we've got a bit of a responsibility to not only pat ourselves on the back, but to rather take a step forward and say, how can we actually draw our brothers and sisters along to actually get this done in the long term?
Very well. Mr. Musa Al-Kadum, UNESCO has been instrumental on this journey. What do you make as far as reflecting on the past 30 years are concerned, of course, but also returning to the birthplace of the Windhoek Declaration?
I think that what I can add to what have been said is just to take stock and celebrate those valiant African journalists who actually start the process, and they start the process here. UNESCO was behind. The other UN agencies were also supporting the initiative. And what we have to realize is that while we are celebrating the proud to have the name of Windhoek and Namibia to be attached to a declaration which is now becoming a reference to World Press Freedom Day and pluralism is important for us to see that. So the fact that it's coming back to its roots 30 years after is, I think it's a momentum, and it's a good time for again, Namibia and the journalists and to understand that this is a global event. This is a global celebration, a global conference with all its process to look at how contemporary issues related to freedom of expression, access to information are actually addressed and taking into account also the changing environment that the communication is living today. So this is again a momentum. This is a moment where indeed we, Namibia governments and here UNESCO, but also the global, I would say, partners, because it is, as I said, it's a global conference, we are going to build a momentum towards another declaration that will lead us, that will give guidelines for how to address those contemporary issues affecting media and journalism.
Thank you very much. We will get into the particulars in a bit, but at this stage, these contemporary issues that you're referring to faced by journalists, which are some of the key ones?
The key ones, I think, you have seen a change of environment completely. Really, you see, you have now the mobile phones and the internet, and you have all those the flow of information which is becoming out of control, and the issue of misinformation, disinformation. But more important, I see two other aspects that we will discuss also later, is how do we then educate the citizens to better learn and read and enjoy and use the information in a proper manner. This is what you call the media information literacy. And furthermore, another pillar, another issue is how do we sustain media today? How do we sustain media outlets?
Thank you.
Within all this changing environment.
Thank you very much. We're now joined via Skype by Mr. Jovel Rantau, Chairperson of the African Editors Forum. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Denver. Good evening to everyone tonight.
It's good to have you back.
Yes, very good to be back with you and talking about a subject very close to our hearts.
Yes, first things first, just remind us about the objectives of the African Editors Forum, please.
Well, the African Editors Forum is the biggest organization of editors in Africa. We have over 450 editors across the continent, and our mission is very simple: to fight for media freedom, fight for freedom of expression, and to tell African stories, Africans and the world. And we remove in the struggle to achieve that, we fight, we remove everything, every obstacle that prevents us from telling that story.
Very well. I've already gauged the take of your fellow panelists, but I'd like to ask you the same. How significant is it for World Press Freedom Day to be celebrated in Namibia 30 years after signing the Windhoek Declaration?
It's very significant for us because, you know, when delegates met in Namibia from April 29 to May 3, 1991, very few could have predicted that once again something that will shape the world order was about to come out of Africa. That seminar, which was organized by UNESCO, ended with a Windhoek Declaration calling for a free, pluralistic, and independent media at a time when African media in particular was dominated by state-controlled outlets in both print and broadcast. You know, it was a bold move that was responding to the challenge at the time, and the challenges of the end of the Cold War, one-party rules, the march of democratic progress the world over. So the Windhoek Declaration, this African product, did not only become a benchmark used by the UN General Assembly to declare May 3 the date of its adoption as the International Press Freedom Day, but it was celebrated all over the world and used as a basis to organize similar business seminars, leading to other declarations all over the world, such as the Alma Ata Declaration for Central Asia, the Standard Declaration for the Middle East, the Santiago Declaration for Latin America and the Caribbean,
Thank
all
you.
relying heavily on the Duke Declaration.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Mashalenga, Mr. Musa Al-Kudum touched on it earlier. So 30 years down the line, the dynamics have changed significantly. In 1991, the internet was almost unheard of, especially on our continent, and very few people on the continent knew about mobile devices or cell phones. What are your sentiments around how we needed to adapt to current realities?
Yes. As you said, by then, these gadgets were not there. Now they are there. The difference between then and now is that now the media is able to reach a wider section of the community. Because even those that are unable to send their print media to various corners of the country, they can have them in an electronic form, and many people from various parts of the country are able to access that. So that again is a bonus to media institutions. Even when people are as far as in the US, China, Moscow, and so forth, in the Russian Federation, in Australia, they will be able to read what is happening from various parts of the country, from what is happening in Namibia. So there is basically no limit now as far as access to the media is concerned.
Thank you very much, Doc. From your perspective, Mr. Stefan, comparing then and now, how has the industry had to adjust?
Well, I think the changes have been quite obvious in terms of you almost get no outlet anymore, whether it's radio, TV station, it might be media, print media, whatever it is. Everybody has joined that following onto the electronic media. But what concerns me sometimes is that in the process, we in Namibia, for example, we're very fortunate. We've got a network coverage which is almost second to none. And so what worries me sometimes is that in the process, especially in the African context, we leave quite a lot of people behind because not everybody is connected. And so I think there's a very real need to somehow at least maintain what we've got over the medium term so that everybody has got time to actually catch up with us. And then after that, only in probably 10 years' time or whatever it will take now, we can then gradually move totally over into a space where probably it's only electronic media. And the other serious concern that I've got, and I think it's a concern everybody has in one way or the other, is that every housewife, every person down the street has suddenly become a reporter. The problem is that not all of these people necessarily make sure that their facts are actually correct. So with the result is fake news quickly starts making the rounds simply because people assume they know. And everybody now suddenly shares any nonsense that is sometimes shared on whether it's by WhatsApp or on their mail or whatever they do. But like I said, everybody is suddenly a specialist reporter. And there I see a big danger. And we need some form of making sure that those things are at least declining a bit in terms of making sure that the mainstream media is supported sufficiently to make them believable in terms of them not taking shortcuts, in terms of making very sure that their stuff is factual.
Thank you.
And if we can do that, then I'm quite sure over the longer term everybody is in for the long run.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly, seeing that you are raising them, the first challenge that relates to the digital divide, but also the one that relates to citizen journalism. How can one overcome those?
Well, like I said, the biggest thing is obviously we need to be and that's why I keep hammering on continent. I think it's very important that Namibia reports about Namibia, Zambians report about Zambians to Namibians, and not over Europe to us. And if we can slowly but surely develop a brand or a name for ourselves that we are factual, then automatically people will stick to those media types that are keeping facts on the table. And so over time, I think it's very important that we get some form of support, whether it be government, whether it is private sector. We need to have a situation where we get a better support in terms of supporting media as a whole, so that media can do the job that they're trained to do. Whereas I don't want to sort of shoot off housewives now, but let that person who's not trained in that job rather comment rather than try and write their own news.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So what is your take on media then and media now, and how we as an industry have had to adjust?
I think let me, in addition to what was said, let me also put something in context, what is very interesting. I think the previous, our colleagues who were on Skype mentioned part of that, which is to say that 1991, if you remember, this was almost the end of the Cold War. Right? But at the same time, it coincided with what you call the push for democracy in Africa. And it's the beginning of the 1990s. So at that time, media indeed was so important. So this is a common similarity. Now, the similarity to this situation now is the fact that we've just faced a huge global crisis, this pandemic, which is, coming in a situation where you have also a complete change of the landscape of the media. So
in what way?
In various ways. We talk about the implication or the impact of the ICTs, right, in the media, in positive or negative way. I think that Mr. Stefan just mentioned one of that, the fact that you have the citizen journalists who are just publishing, have the possibility of publishing whatever information they have, or circulate information, whatever they have. So, but at the same time, it gives access to people for information. Today you have kids who are in school who have a huge library in the hands, which was not the case, I would say, even in our generation, where you have to go physically to a library to consult one book. Today you have you need the information, you just Google and have that. So the whole context has changed positively also. We should not just say this is only negative. No, it brought a lot of innovation and progress to the humanity. But then, of course, the sad aspect is the issue about misinformation, the issue about not being able to control those who are spreading information. And this is why we need this sort of platform, this is sort of a conference to take this, let's say the picture of the situation, but also predict and also try to recommend how to address those issues. And this is also the purpose of the World Press Freedom Day conference, actually.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly, what do you make of the challenge relating to the digital divide that Mr. Stefan was also referring to?
This is an issue all member states, all of us, I would say, all the world we are addressing. We have to address this. And I would say COVID has brought in more sharp the fact that you have some countries who have access to technology, and then the others who do not have access. But where we need information, we need that technology for various aspects, continuity of learning and other aspects. So this is an area where indeed we have to stand and work with all together, including with our partners.
Thank you. Mr. Rantau, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, Dan.
How has the industry transformed over the past 30 years?
Well, it has gone through nothing or something not short of a revolution. The number of media voices have not doubled or trebled; they've just gone through the roof. There are more and more voices. The way the story is being told, the way the story is being consumed, the speed at which the story is being consumed, brought to us by the digital revolution has meant that 2021 and 1991 are cheese and chalk. So that is the exciting part. But the worrying part is that, as my colleagues have indicated, you still have issues with propaganda, misinformation, and for us, the issue of the safety of journalism remains core. Those issues are as serious today as they were in 1991. The African Editors Forum just launched the other day the digital platform for the safety of journalists in Africa, precisely because the problem persists, precisely because while Namibia is this shining example of media freedom of expression, there are parts of our continent where media freedom and freedom of expression is a matter of life and death.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mashilenga, as much as we're excited about hosting the event in our country, we're still in the middle of this global pandemic, and surely it must be challenging to celebrate it whilst COVID is still in our midst. How does one do this?
Well, up to now, we do not know what the situation will be, but we all hope and believe that things will be moving from worse to better. Yeah, the challenge is what will be the number of the gatherings during that time. So that will determine how the event will look like. But obviously, it will not be in one venue. It will be in various venues. Another challenge is, for example, what will be the state of COVID in the country? Are we going to have lockdown that time or not? We had a conference in the Netherlands where it was planned we were going to be there when they are passing the baton to us. But as fate had it, it was during the time of the lockdown and so forth, but we had it virtually. So if worse come to worse, that we are unable to have physical gathering here, we'll still go ahead virtually.
Very well. Is that also your take, sir, from the perspective of the Editors Forum of Namibia? And how do we conduct ourselves as media practitioners in any event in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, I just want to say this. I'm probably not quite as hardcore as the government because I've got a very strong belief that we need to, after 1 year, we need to enter a stage where we all put our heads together and find ways in which we can outlive this constant threat without making it rule us. We need to start managing that COVID sickness. And so I strongly believe that we need to be bold, but we need to be very sure about what we do. And that's where we need some guidance, probably from the health sector. But I strongly feel that the health sector also needs to start thinking out of the box. So I'm not saying that we suddenly have to have 300 people all in one room. We can still do it 50, 50, 50, whatever we do. But I strongly feel that it is time for us as humans to start finding a balance where normality is done with a mask on, with social distancing being observed, with doing all the right stuff and still being able to interact as humans. So
Are we not doing that already, sir?
No, not yet, not sufficiently enough yet. There's still that constant desire to have these online interactions, which I totally get when we're when we're in different places and there's no need for somebody to come from Frankfurt to Namibia just to join us. What I'm saying is we need to be more bold in having sittings where we are together and we manage this in a proper way. And I just hope that we are able to set that example with that World Press Freedom Day, where we observe all these things and we do it. We haven't done it enough yet. We've had 1 or 2 examples so far. But it would be a big challenge, and we would be doing very well, in my view, if we were able to show people that you can safely come together, yet keep distance, yet do all the observing that you need to do, and still have a proper conference where you have interaction, because there's nothing like looking somebody in the eye and seeing that he means what he's saying, as opposed to doing it over a cell phone or on a video screen where you don't really know whether this guy is really meaning what he says.
Thank you very much. So what is your take? You touched on COVID-19 earlier as well. Mr. Stefan is calling for us to be bolder and have more in-person interaction.
Yes, I would like to be more optimistic than he is, and we all sit in the steering committee where we discuss the various options. But what is there is the fact that we learn from what happened from The Hague. For sure, we will not do like how we celebrate in Addis or in Ghana or in other places, fully physical. This means that we have to see and be innovative and take what we call a hybrid format, where we indeed have meeting taking place in large, I would say, ballrooms with respecting actually the measures that have been imposed, but at the same time allowing those international participants who were to come here, who have to join us, because this is not only a Namibia conference, this is a world conference on press freedom, actually. So this will allow then the others who will not be able to come in because of the restriction due to the COVID, actually to follow from that. So it is a combination of the two. Yes, we're planning to have our best to have physical participant, the maximum that will be allowed by the national regulation on that, but at the same time to enable others to join. Let me just give an example here.
Very briefly, please.
Yes, for the case of let's say the Hague, for example, we've got almost 3,500 participants who were constantly following up the conference. Again. You compare that to the normal physical standard where we used to have 800 or 1,000. Now, okay, what is the benefit here? Of course, it is better to have physical presence, to have all the media practitioners to be physically there to interact, because this is the time they gather annually to discuss that.
Thank you very much.
But the reality is different.
Very well. Mr. Rantau, are you still there?
I'm here, Denver.
Very well. Are we in agreement that the World Press Freedom Day is not a once-off activity and that media freedom is an issue that people should engage with continuously?
Yes, I think media freedom is a never-ending struggle. You know, it's like it's in health terms. You know, we are talking now about our new normal, brought to us by the pandemic. The way we are going to conduct our lives has changed, and I think it's changed forever. So in the same way that we are going to continue to fight COVID, fight diabetes and other diseases, we have to continue to fight this disease called media oppression and the oppression of people's views across Africa.
Thank you very much. Should you want to participate in tonight's very important conversation, if you have a question for one of the panelists, the number to dial is 061 291 3339. 061 291 3339. Please remember to switch off your television set or your radio to avoid any confusion. Dr. Moshelenga, Mr. Rantau is calling for the end to what he terms media oppression. Are you also concurring that the World Press Freedom Day cannot be a once-off activity, but that media freedom is a concept that needs to be engaged in throughout?
Yes, I fully agree with him that media freedom is something that needs to be ongoing. You can't have a once-off thing. One, dynamics change, government change. You might have a government that was tolerating the media, then the next time you have a government that will not be tolerating the media. That's one. Two, also the dynamics among journalists also change. You know, you have new issues emerging. As it was stated earlier, you need training. When we were checking the insert there, you need trained media from time and again.
Continuous professional development.
Continuous professional development. So as continuous monitoring of media freedom need to be ongoing. But while we are still there, I would want to echo the words that Toivo Njebela was just saying. Because now, freedom of reporting comes with responsibility. The issue of checking the correctness of what you are reporting is also important, because you would also want to establish a good reputation for yourself as a journalist. And I keep on reminding journalists to say, today you might be a journalist, tomorrow you might be in a public or a private institution, holding a position whereby the medias will be time and again coming to you. And I'm sure you would want to be treated with utmost respect, and also for the media to report accurately on what we are saying. Now, you should now start doing that when you are in journalism profession. The other issue that comes to my mind is the issue of the right of reply. So that when you hear something, then definitely you must give people the right of reply before you run to go to the press. And I said it previously that at times people will say, we try to call a person, we cannot reach a person. For example, you would call a parliamentarian when you know that parliament is in session, they are unable to answer their phones.
And you just try once.
Or you call a CEO and you are told, or a general manager and you are told they are in a management or an EXCO meeting. And then you say you run to the press without even asking what time are they coming out, can they call me back, and so forth.
Thank you.
So all these things need to be ongoing, both from the side of the governments and the public, but also from the side of the journalists.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stefan, what do you make of this never-ending struggle that Mr. Rantau termed it, but also against the backdrop of the challenges raised by the minister?
I think there are two items here. Number one, press freedom is a valuable good, not negotiable. So we always need to do our level best to maintain it, to make sure that state of affairs is an ongoing principle, no matter whether the government changes or not. Because that's a good, and it's ours to keep and to maintain. And exactly what the minister said, and I totally agree that there's a responsibility on the journalist to do his or her work right. But by the same token, it's obviously a give and take, exactly as the minister stated. So this is where the access to information becomes such an important part of the whole thing, because many of these questions should technically not even be asked. They should simply be available on an internet site. We just said, we spoke of the benefits of having internet access. And one of the benefits surely must be that information is available much more easily. So much so that often that question is answered instead of waiting for another 3 days, because this really ties in with what we said earlier. The person who just writes his own little message on Facebook or wherever he wants to get rid of his frustration will simply state what he states or she states. So before that comes to that stage, we must actually make sure that the news is out, and the news is out correct. So while I totally respect that you can't, as you put it, just phone once and say, luckily the minister didn't pick up, so I can say he didn't respond. On the other hand, we need to have a situation where the responses come a little faster, either by access to information, to information that is prepared already and available to the public at large, even for students who do their projects for university or school. And on the other hand, if we don't get that answer there, that there must be some form of pyramid system that if the minister is not available, then at least the one after him, in other words, the vice minister answers, and so that information can come forward more quickly before that other person has posted his fake news.
Thank you very much. Mr. Al-Kadum, moving over to this year's event. At this stage, although still a work in progress, the theme is information as a public good. What does that mean?
A very interesting concept, because I would relate to the word public goods, which is, I don't want to go further to the definition as it's given by, the academics, but this is it is important. A public good, you have those stakeholders and the barriers, the right barriers. What we take from here is the fact that noting the change environment, actually, we have to look at and advocate a number of issues related to that, which is to ensure that first, in terms of offer of information, we sustain the viability of the media outlets, right, to make sure that we have quality production of information, right? This is the offer side. We look at the issue related to the transparency of information today by the internet companies. Transparency in the sense that we relate that to the fake news and all the other aspects related to the transparency. But at the same time now...
How is that linked to transparency?
Transparency in the sense that how do we promote, how we work with the internet company to make sure that the information that they have, they treat it correct, or the information they have on individuals, right, in terms of data and other things, they are treated properly. So this is also important for us to make sure that we have that. And then the last one, which is important, that then we actually support the citizens, or we train the citizens to be able to actually consume, if I can use that word of goods, consume this good, which is a public goods, which is, freedom of expression is a fundamental right. So it has to be protected, but it has also, and freedom, free flow information has to be also provided in a clean, in a proper manner.
Just very briefly,
yes.
Both the minister as well as Mr. Stephan spoke about matters that relate to ethics and media freedom.
Yeah.
How does this theme speak to those issues?
It speaks very well, and this is what we were relating before that. For the journalists also to think about what you call its own deontology or its own ethics of journalists, making sure that they apply those principles to make sure that information is checked or double-checked. And today we are, with the internet companies, we are trying to support that movement, so that there is a movement to double-check those information. The fact-check is important.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, just very briefly before we go over to Mr. Rantel.
I just want to reiterate that fact. Public good does not only put responsibility on the government, it puts a huge responsibility on us as journalists and reporters. And I think that's a role that we should not underestimate, because we talk of influencers these days. Make no mistake, reporters are influencers, and they can use it for the good or for the bad. And that's where the public good can probably be a play on words a bit.
Do journalists deal with that responsibility sensibly from your perspective?
I do think there's an improvement to a large extent, and the reason why I say it is I compare the reports to the ombudsman, to the media ombudsman. That surely should be an indication if there's a decrease in terms of reporting such cases to the media ombudsman, and especially having him actually deal with this in a harsh manner sometimes. We haven't had those cases for some time now. So I think there's a continuous improvement, especially in-house. People are taken to task and reminded of their responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Rantel, are you there?
I'm here, Denver.
As far as this year's envisaged theme is concerned, what do you make of it? Information as a public good.
Yes, the information is important, particularly now during a period that I consider to be a wartime. We are in the middle of a global war against this invisible enemy. So information, credible information, has never been more important. We need to provide information to Africans that will make them take decisions about their own lives. We need to empower them with information. This is why it's important that all the obstacles that stand between ordinary citizens getting this information must be removed. The repression I was talking about, the detention of journalists on the one hand, And also, what my colleagues were talking about on the panel, regarding ethics. Africans have the right to access good fact-checked information from independent and trusted sources. So the responsibility is on us as the media to make sure that we remain that dependent and trusted source to our people. And I know that many national organizations, editors and journalist organizations are working with independent fact-check organizations and
Thank you.
other training organizations to work and improve our credibility.
Thank you very much. If you want to participate in tonight's conversation, if you have a question for one of the panelists, the number to dial is 061 291 339. 061 291 339. Dr. Mashalenga, I'd also like to gauge your take on this envisaged theme for this year, information as a public good.
Yes, as it was said earlier by the previous speakers, information as public good, one, when people have access to information, it is in accordance with accepted standards of transparency and democracy. That's when we say information is public good, it's for the public good, because we are upholding the virtues of transparency and democracy. Two, when information is accessible to the public, they are able to determine how to hold to account those that they have put in place. Or if it is private, it will enable shareholders how to hold to account either the directors or the managers that are managing the institution.
Thank you.
To which, which belongs to these shareholders.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Gentlemen, we've unfortunately run out of time. We definitely need at least another session. Mr. Rantal, I'd like to start with you, please. Your concluding remarks this evening.
I think this year's event has got to come up with and answer the challenges of 2021 in the same way that the conference in 1991 answered the challenges of that time. We need to come up with better ways of how to remove obstacles so that information for public good can be enhanced.
Thank you.
We need to come up with innovative ways of how to help the media that is devastated by COVID-19.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Musa Al-Kadum, very briefly, your concluding remarks. What is the way forward?
The way forward is, again, to make sure that as we are moving towards the 1st and 3rd of May, we build, and this is the process we took, when it's a we, UNESCO, and of course and supported by the government of Namibia, but working for this global event. We through a process, we developed thinking, discussions, recommendation, coming from various regions of the world. We are currently setting up a number of regional conferences from Latin America, Arab states, and Latin America, and so towards and Asia and including Europe, towards a recommendation of what could be a Windhoek plus 30 declaration, so that the name of Windhoek is still there, guiding us for the coming 20 years.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, you have one sentence, Mr. Stefan.
It's essentially, Windhoek must become a brand for media freedom.
Thank you.
And we need to extend that.
Thank you very much. Your brief concluding remarks, Honourable Minister.
For us to sustain the aspiration of the Windhoek Declaration, I want to underscore another point that was said here earlier, the issue of training. We need ongoing training for our journalists. I see sometimes questions that I receive from journalists. One, that some have not done their homework. At time I spend time correcting them. Sometimes I do not even have time to correct them.
Thank you.
Training is very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's continue the good fight.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the words of Frank Stefan, the chairperson of the Editors Forum of Namibia, Windhoek should become the brand for media freedom. That was Talk of the Nation for this week. We're back next week, same time, same place. Good night.